but maybe we could first introduce ourselves. So my name is Sophie Elpers. I'm editor from Cultural Analysis, which is one of the SIEF journals. We are associated with SIEF since 2011. Maybe we can now have a huge introduction round, right? So we are an open access online journal working with peer reviews, publishing articles, but also responses to those articles to encourage discussion, and publishing notes and reviews. And maybe Karen, you can add more things. Karen Miller, who is my colleague, editor of Cultural Analysis,
and one of the other senior editors of Cultural Analysis. And I think Sophie covered most of what we do. We've been publishing for about 20 years. We started out of UC Berkeley, actually as a group of grad students studying under Alan Dundes, and we just really wanted to have a different kind of platform that we saw at that time that wasn't exposing what we thought was really dynamic in the folklore field. And actually, I'm rather proud of the fact that we started two things. We started Cultural Analysis, which has gone on for 20 years. And we also started something called the Folklore Roundtable, which was inviting scholars to come into Berkeley and have like afternoon lectures. And they are still continuing at Berkeley. So I was really kind of proud that we started two traditions that have managed to hang on.
Can I ask a question, interrupting the introductory round? I'm just wondering, since Cultural Analysis is, from its origin, is a US journal, how come it's affiliated with SIEF? What's the history behind that?
Let's see. I'm going to be very bad about the years, but it was at an AFS conference years ago. Probably
it has been in 2011, I think, right?
Yeah, I think it started with discussions were 2010, maybe at an AFS conference, and we started. Valdemar was one of the Hafstein, one of our original founders, also at Berkeley, and he had gone. He was now continuing work over in Europe, and through I think. A lot of through him and other people, we just started having discussions about this being a very productive liaisons between the two of us, the two journals. And then we were very lucky that it kind of synchronicity was able to work together.
Yeah, and then Cultural Analysis made this 50 years SIEF anniversary issue, which you might know, which is also online. Yeah. Which was really, a nice symbol of being together in a way. And I think also SIEF, we do not have to think it as a European organization anymore. We really want to broaden it up. So Cultural Analysis came at a good time. But it was definitely also Valdemar, the person who was the bridge between the two.
He's been the glue for a lot of things.
and of course, the interesting thing of Ethnologia Europaea, which Anne Dippel, we come now to, I would say, Ethnologia Europaea, is that it was it was in a way separated from SIEF, because Eriksson, when SIAP became SIEF, was really against the SIEF, the F. He really wanted to have only the E, the ethnological part in it, and not the F. And then as I remembered correctly, he established Ethnologia Europaea just as a kind of, as a kind of, I don't know, to have this balance in Europe of CF and Ethnologia Europaea. And it was really a huge thing that Ethnologia Europaea in 2015 became one of the CF journals, because then this whole history of struggles also, and of being not always in the same, having not always the same opinion, came together again. So we really celebrated it then, that Ethnologia came back to CF, or CF came back to Ethnologia Europaea.
Wow, I really didn't know that, and I know it's really embarrassing that I don't even know the history of the journal I'm representing.
Well, me neither, very little, except that I know it started in 1966. So that was like the year I was born. So, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's such an old journal. I was actually...
Laura and Alex, maybe you could just shortly introduce yourself, and then Anne Dippel, and then we go into the discussions.
Yeah.
And Laura.
I just wanted to say really quickly that I was in Berkeley around the time when I think cultural analysis was starting to be discussed. I wasn't part of the discussions, but I knew the grad students there at that time, and I was just there for a month quickly. And so
I may have met you. I may have met you. Well, I lived in the Bay Area. I lived there for 30 years. So
wow. So hey, maybe we crossed that. I'm sorry, I don't remember who I met at that time, because I met so many people. But no, I was just there. But I mean, because I originally come from Northern California myself, so I was just kind of okay. But anyway, Alex can say some things about Ethnologia Europaea, and I can join in.
That I can't say much about Ethnologia Europaea. No, yeah, and we know each other, right? So I don't actually introduce myself now. Laura and I are we have just become editors-in-chief of Ethnologia Europaea, which might excuse our limited knowledge. We're trying to catch up, and we still have a lot to learn. And for us, this meeting, I think, is really important and really interesting, because on the one hand, we are still learning how to be editors, and I think we gain a lot from discussions and from other people's experiences. And on the other hand, we feel that not only Ethnologia Europaea, but the whole journal, could you call that industry, or the whole domain, everything is somehow in flux. And there's so many things happening, with not only with transitioning to open access, but with all these different models, with different publishers, with funding issues, budgeting issues. And so this is what I'm really interested in, because we are still learning, but we also have the feeling that it's not like there's a bunch of people who already know everything, but everyone's in flux in a way, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and also not only the international journals, right, but also the national ones face absolutely the same problems.
And that's a perfect slide into everything. I'm very happy, first of all, to be here, and I think I'm in the right place. I'm one of the new editors-in-chief of the Zeitschrift für Volkskunde / Journal of European Ethnology, Cultural Anthropology. And as most of you know, it's the representative organ of the German Association for Volkskunde. And we are facing everything at the same time. We're facing the transition of the name of the Gesellschaft für Volkskunde, which will happen this year. And this is highly disputed, and it's highly complex. As you can imagine, it's a 130-year-old journal. It's the oldest journal we have, actually, one of the oldest journals in Germany. The German-speaking countries, and we will change with the name of the change. The name will change with the new name of the association, And we also, at the same time, running out in with the contract of our publisher, and we are also facing the open access transition at the same time. So this year, I was just called into the reduction group last November, and in January, I started to lead discussions with publishers to renegotiate the old contract we had with Waxman. I think you have heard of all this. I talked with transcript editor in chief, Frau Werner, which was super fascinating, with other publishers, and I learned a lot about the changes and the renovations we could do for scientific journals for the 21st century. So what publishers actually want from us as journals, why they want us, and how we could actually transform our journal and make it visionary and prepare it for the 21st century and the media conditions that are going along with. So leaving just the old-fashioned 19th, 20th century concept of writing articles, the forum, discussions, Q&A, recensions of book, and so on, really asking how we could turn this into a multimedia hub and bring this together. And I'm super interested in how you're doing this. We have currently the situations that there are money, there's a grant. We want to have money for the open access transformation of the journal for the Zeitschrift für Volkskunde and the similar journal for the former, now it's called Society DGSKA, German Society for Cultural Anthropology and Social and Cultural Anthropology. So it's former the Völkerkunde journal. And it looks quite, let's say, as Karin Werner of Transcript said, what we have as open access transformation is something like the economy class version. So it looks a bit like Ryanair, and I'm not very happy with that. Frankly spoken, I want to have something which shows the self-worth of us as a discipline, and is at the same time giving all the benefits that we have with the open access transformation. And I'm very curious how you all do this. And I sent you greetings from Regina Bendix, that you might know, all of you. She's part of the team, and Thomas Thiemeyer and Timo Heimerdinger, he's new. So we are the new 4 editors-in-chief, and we will have several meetings and just see what will stay from the old journal, what will come. We decided to stay with Waxman for another couple of years, but we are not necessarily bound to it. And but we have a very good lector there who's doing the really editing, copy editing, and content, really understands the content. So that's something that we value very much. Yeah, and I'm curious how you all do this. And I'm new in the business, so hi. And
I have a question. Excuse my ignorance, but are both of your journals print? Are you still printing journals in hard copy?
We are still a printing journal. That's the current journal, the current issue, and that's how it looks. And this is the last print version. And from next year on, and this is something we negotiated, we have a hybrid version. So actually, it's a triple. So we have an HTML readable version, we have a PDF version, and we have this old print thing, because we were still. And I totally am for understanding books as a material object, but to make a beautiful book, and we have beautiful journals in Germany, this costs a lot of money, and since we are funded by the association, we simply do not have the means to do that. So these are just many open questions we have. We are super curious how you, for example, in the US, how you do this with your association, how whether there are any collaborations, how you link the websites, or if there's anything like in cultural anthropology, for example. I think they did this quite good, but I think one can do even better. And these are open questions we have.
So the idea is that you keep the printed version.
Well, 3 to 4 years, because actually it's not rentable. So we have libraries which are, since we are that old, we have libraries and traditional people who are not even part of the association, but who really have an abonnement. And we want to keep these people, and then slowly we transition. And that's also a transition from understanding this thing as a whole book to an article-centered concept of a journal. And that's what I learned from Karin Werner, that this is the future. So actually those publishers have interest in our journals, because for them it's like a node in a web which leads readers to their repertoire of whatever they publish every year. And so, yeah, that's the future for people like Karin Werner, who is has a very, I would say, not saying, but a very space-taking model as a publisher, as Transcript, as a published, very quickly growing. And it's interesting to talk to somebody like her, because she really looks very much into the future, but at the same time is delegating many tasks and outsources a lot of things that are traditionally done by a publishing house. And we as editors, of course, don't want to be overburdened with stuff that actually is traditionally done by smaller publishers still.
I think you mentioned something which is really important, and we also see this importance, but cannot have a huge challenge, because we as cultural analysts do not have any money. So we make it just without anything. Right. And that is the lector, the copy editing thing, which a good publisher can do or provide in a way. And Ethnologia Europaea has also a very good copy editing with Magdalena, what is her name? Tallenbach, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So this is really essential to guarantee a good quality journal. And cultural analysis is here facing huge challenges,
which we always have. I mean.
Yeah, we already know how to face them and how to solve them already, because we have to.
Yeah, we're. I mean, for 20 years, it's been really just a group of people that are invested in keeping a belief in the mission, really. Yeah. And we've always been aligned with the university. It was University of Berkeley. So we did get some money. It's interesting. We did actually start by, we've always been on open access, and we've always been online. That was one of the things that we really thought was important to the mission of cultural analysis, because we really believe that everybody should be able to read our journal anywhere in the world. But we also, at the very beginning, were able to print off some hardbound journals, and we sent them free to institutions around the world that could not either could not access for some reason, or they needed a hardbound, or they wanted a hardbound. And we did that for as many years as we could. And then it became ever increasingly just something that we couldn't find the budget for from the institutions that we were in. And that's why we completely transitioned. And now but one of the things that we do is we still put it together as a issue. And the layout is, if you want to print it off, you can bind it, and it looks like.
Yeah, you have our colleagues who do the graphic design. They do one PDF version and one HTML version, like I think the same does Ethnologia Europaea, right? So, and then it is a kind of, you can always print
it off, because we thought that was something that if people institutions had the money and they wanted to print it off, maybe they could make it still look like that.
Can I ask, Karen and Sophie, can I ask, what platform are you using for the online version? I mean, how are you getting it online? Is it a particular software, or is it what is it that you're?
The platform we're using is still at Berkeley. We're using their. We had to go through quite a because as all of us graduate students graduated, we got further and further and further away from being able to be in the loop at Berkeley, although we had people that were still continuing to circle through that we could sort of secretly go under this, but finally that became unsustainable. And but then they opened up a set of servers that we managed to get through Charles Briggs, who is on our board of directors, who teaches there. And because I'm an alumni and, we were able to sort of, again, circumvent that and sort of go in through that way and and sort of sit on their servers. Actually put it out. And that has really saved us because we were actually kind of like, okay, where are we going? And so far, cross our fingers, it seems to be working. So as Sophie said, we've had a lot of challenges because we don't have a budget, and because I would say, Sophie, you're the only one in Europe right now, right? And yes. The rest of us are in the United States. But we try to be global, and because
we have quite a lot of Europeans, if you still think in Europe and other countries in the editorial board, the advisory board, or I don't know how you.
We have Africans, we have Europeans. We try to bring in a whole lot of people at the table. I would say that actually, Anna, when you were saying Ryanair, I was thinking that Sophie and I have just, we've talked about, there's just a constant budgeting, not budgeting, but a constant thing of what can we do with the time, because none of us are paid. All of us have jobs. Most of us teach or have full-time jobs. And so copy editing is huge for us. Also peer review, a very, very big, at least it is for me, huge headache, which I think is one of our discussions themes that we were going to look at. Takes up a lot of time. And I know Sophie, it takes up a lot of her time and it takes up a lot of our time that we have to just carve out, and we don't get paid for this. And so therefore pushing people is a little bit problematic, especially our copy editors who we also cannot pay. Now, I'm very fortunate. One of them is my daughter and she happens to be an incredible copy editor. So I'm very, very lucky, but, really, when you're relying on people that are doing this because they believe in it, it becomes a real uphill battle as to how far you can push people, and how much you can ask of people. Mm-hmm. I think we've been very, very, very fortunate, and we've gotten really good people who have been very, very dedicated and gone beyond anything that they needed to do. They've been willing to do. Our webmaster, Keisha, is constantly, she's got a full-time job and a new baby, and she still manages to do this incredible work that's we're very grateful for. But it is a challenge. I won't say it's not a challenge.
And I think what we really in our fields really have to avoid is the system you have more in the beta natural sciences, that you have an author pay model. I think this is really bad. So that would never be a solution for cultural analysis, and I think also not a solution for Ethnologia Europaea, that the authors have to pay for being published, which is really terrible, but which other sciences are used to, but they then again have the funding for it. Sometimes, but what if a researcher is not affiliated with an institute? I mean, then again, you have this problem. So I really think we have to avoid this author pay model.
Can I say something really fast? That I really want to hear everything that everyone else knows, because I really don't know enough. But one of the things that I heard last July at the EASA conference, which is the Karen, that's the European Social Anthropology online conference last July, was that there was a similar, they had a really big meeting where they talked about publishing. And there, and also then EISA also had they're going to, where they're leaving Wiley and going to Berghan or something. But anyway, they're shifting there for one of their journals. And they made the point that that Berghan is actually offering, because, I'll just say really fast what Ethnologia Europaea is on currently. We're using Open Library of Humanities, which is it's an open access. Nobody has to pay except for library consortiums. They're the only ones that pay. And it's was created by a couple of guys in the UK, and it was kind of their utopian dream, if I understand right. And it's very interesting. I'll say that much. So basically, but it's very democratic. It's very egalitarian. Nobody has to pay, so it's not excluding anybody. And not authors, not institutions. So nobody in the south of Europe or Eastern Europe has to worry because their institution doesn't have the money to pay for them to get access to read this. But I heard that from these meetings that Berghan is offering the same model, the same open access, nobody pays model, but they give royalties, which I thought was very interesting. And I haven't talked to Berghan myself, but I mean, has anyone else heard of this, of these large publishers going to, because of course they're seeing that these open access, nobody pays models are coming, and that the academics really think it's a great sort of an ideal. But I'm wondering, and of course, so they're trying it now. Monique thought, one of the outgoing editors for Ethnologia Europaea, she was wondering if maybe that was just a trial thing for 2 years. They get you hooked, you join, and then they say, no, now we're going to, ask for fees. And that's perfectly possible. But I just don't know if anyone else knows more or anything like this. So I just was curious.
It's actually
I have not heard
that Patrick Laculette is not here because AJAC is in the Open Anthro.
I was hoping he'd come too. Yeah.
So it's really a pity that he's not here, because he could tell us more about that.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Who?
Patrick.
Laculette.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't heard of it, but the minute you started, I was like, "What's the catch?" Nothing is
exactly. Yeah. I mean, the money has to come from
Amazon,
somewhere.
Amazon saying, come and you get this and this, and then you get a little bit hooked and you get settled and you get into it, and then they're like, well, we need the fees start or the this or that, the other thing, and then before you know it, you're entrenched and it's just too hard to get out of it.
Right.
Although I suppose you could look at what are they giving you, like obviously what are they offering you for.
With royalties, I mean, we were just talking about the problem of time. With royalties, you can pay more people to do, and then you don't rely as much on volunteer work. And for us as well, the only person who's being paid is our production manager, Magdalena. But I also heard, let me just tell you about another model that I heard of, because I have a friend in Sweden who is running a journal, not exactly in our fields. And this is when you go to look at it, it's online, and it's open access. And when you go to look at it, it's kind of this economy model that Anne was mentioned. I mean, it looks, it doesn't look as nice, as polished and everything, but they, dare I say this, they're doing it they're only paying 500 euros per issue. That's all the money they need. And they've got people they're paying someone to do the final proofreading and the final copy, and maybe not copy editing it in that sense, but the final, yeah. And then they got the person who puts it on the web. And so they've got a bunch of sub-editors who are doing work for free, and the sub-editors are doing the copy editing and the finding the reviewers into each, it's African studies. So they're, for each, under sort of subcategory. But that's a good example of how cheap, it took them a little bit of money to get started with that. They use now I can't remember the name of the platform, but it's an open access kind of platform. It's actually used a lot by people in Finland. And so they had to pay a little money to get the platform up and running in a sense. But after that, it's only costing 500 an issue, which is, I don't know. These are just different. These are just different possibilities that I'm listening to and I'm trying to understand. And there seem to be so many possibilities. So I'll just stop there. But I just wanted to throw that out.
Where do they get the 500 per issue? Where do
they get it from the same place that we get? It's actually less. It was supposed to be half of our money. Half of our money comes from CF, and the other half comes from a Nordic Council grant for journals. And so they get their money from there, and we get what was supposed to be half of our money, but actually CF has been paying more than half in recent years. So yeah.
Okay.
And that's one reason actually Ethnologia Europea has to have a certain amount of Scandinavian authors and has to have one editor from Scandinavia. That's me in Finland. And so because we get the Nordic Council money, they want it a lot. They want it to be very heavily Nordic. So
yeah. When we discussed the finances of Ethnologia Europea and how much CF can contribute, we had also this suggestion by somebody, well, just rent somebody from a cheaper country and let him or her do the copy editing. But that was nearly everybody said no. That is no option, because you really need somebody who has this feeling for our topics, the feeling for our language, our terminologies. So I'm really wondering how a copy edited issue, well, we do it without, but still how it can be done with 500 euros. I don't know, Anne, how your what your financial situation is. But of course, if you have this open access thing, there will be less abonnees, and that means that you will get less money from the people who really buy the journal.
Yeah, that will be that. The interesting thing is the first proposal by the publisher was a complete open access transformation, and it was even the yearly amount we would have to pay was 500 euros per issue more, because they guarantee you that the data, that everything what you were saying, what is Karen, what is at the University of Berkeley, so that they guarantee that the data migration for the future will be secure and so on. So we have for the library system this application running for the data migration, but the publishing house, of course, also guarantees data migration and that it will be fed into every search engine necessary, and that costs quite an amount of money. And when we had the model of transcript was, of course, without any copy editing, and that was for us not a valuable option. And the third one was a small publishing house, and they proposed quite a cheap copy editing. And we were quite surprised because it was half the amount of what Waxman was proposing. But we really decided to stick with a person that we worked the last 20 years together. And this woman is in her mid-50s, Sabine Verklintner, and so she will not stop her job for the next 20 years or so. She will just continue doing her job. And so we decided first to stay with them, but we are not sure whether this publishing house is able to do this transition. And I think what is making our case a bit specific is twofold. The one thing is it is the representative journal of the association as such. We will have not any abonnements at all, so it will be paid. Even the open access version will be paid by the members of the soon not anymore DGV. If we will decide about that, the members of the association will decide about it on September. Even if we would continue to keep a print version plus open access, the amount of membership fee would rise. And we are also in the situation we will merge the English and the German version. So we are thinking about really having something that's a really big shift, because that actually is not discussed how we will have an English copy editing. Because Frau Verklintner is doing the German copy editing, and currently we have this very bizarre model which has to be understood is like you still publish in German, and then there is money to translate this German published article into English. And the problem is very often that the text doesn't work anymore in English. So you can't do just a simple translation because the whole way the text is arranged is totally different. So we are thinking of even having a double language option inside of the journal. So these are many things. I'm getting distracted here from the question how we get funded and how we get the money. But we managed to negotiate and to get it a bit cheaper, the open access transformation, and to include for the next 4 years, I think, the print version to keep the older people, because we expect that many people will not feel at home with the new name. So it's still Volkskunde, folklore. And we are not sure how the membership will, constitution of the membership as such will change. That's also a fascinating thing if you think about it, because we have in Germany the Social and Cultural Anthropological Association. Then we have this soon not anymore to be Deutsche Gesellschaft für Volkskunde. And we have the Gesellschaft für Kulturwissenschaften oder Kulturwissenschaftliche Gesellschaft. So we have 2 other major associations, and we are still haunted by the West and the rest divide of our discipline. That's the problem. And actually what we all would wish for would be a merging of both associations, but that would probably lead with the current funding situation to the end of professorships and positions at the university and so on and so on and so on. So everybody becomes totally regionalist, just because the University of Freiburg wants to keep both the professorship for African anthropology, region of Africa, and those who were traditionally doing research in European fields. And that's a problem we have. So we are really bound with a certain post-colonial and romantic constitutions of our society. And so I just, we are a bit... Also, we are really in a mess because we don't know how we should really name ourselves, because everybody has already grabbed a name and we're still stuck with the first.
Actually, SIEF was not so happy with JECA because we thought, okay, JECA is just the merging of Ethnologia Europaea and cultural analysis. It's just the, you know.
I know, and whatever you do it wrong. For example, we feel like, the Völkerkunde people, they took because most institutes are called Kulturanthropologie, and now they call themselves Sozial- und Kulturanthropologie, and we don't want to name ourselves Europäische Ethnologie, and we can't name ourselves or not every institute could shift into empirische Kulturwissenschaft, first of all, because in my opinion, we give away the whole anthropology part. And second, the East German institutes have traditionally Kulturwissenschaft departments. So the Berlin Institute for European Ethnology can't change into Kulturwissenschaft because there is an Institute for Kulturwissenschaft with its own tradition. They will never switch. So whatever we do, it will be just the same. We will discuss our names until the end of dawn, which is funny, I think, at the same time. It's ironic, but we are and for us, the easy solution is just we will call the Zeitschrift as the members decided how the association will be named. That's how it is. We need more contributions. We have the aspiration to be a leading journal or the leading journal in the German-speaking countries. So we are not taking PhD works. We usually take something from the postdoc level on, which is somehow directing. That's the idea. But we have the competition to the Schweizerische, the Swiss and the Austrian journals, and the international competition. So we are also in the situation that we need or want or wish more contributions. And those contributions we have, usually we do really midwife work. We actually do heavy midwifing when we're having those contributions. It's not only reviewing, it's really like guiding those, which is, it's fun. And at the same time, it's a big challenge to bring people to meet that expectation we have.
Well, Well, it's interesting because this gets into one of the themes, actually. I think I have a nice little 2 paragraphs.
I want to hear your 2-minute thing. Yes.
Although I'm not going to read it because you should see the little setup I have with my iPad above. And so I can read it, but I don't look like I'm like this, kind of like this. But one of the things that cultural analysis and generally it's the conversation, I think, not just the United States, which is access and inclusiveness. And this follows into the, sort of the decolonization of the academic canon and the decolonization of institutions. For example, at cultural analysis, Sophie, jump in here. We're really looking at how we can bring more voices in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really, really need more voices, and we need marginalized scholars, and that at least because, for example, I just think we're missing the insight, the knowledge, the expertise of those scholars and the approaching ways they see and they theorize the world. And we're in our own little silos. All of us are in our little institutional silos, and we don't even know what we don't know until something manages to get in and we read it. And then we think, oh my God, this is a completely different way of looking at something, or at least this is the way I'm going to speak from my view.
Yeah, but I totally agree.
Yeah, and so one of the things that Anna is saying, I really resonated is you have to midwife if you're going to talk about scholars who don't have access. Literally, there is a paywall. Or there is, there's this academic elitism, and I think maybe in Europe, Anna, you seem to be alluding to it, but there's this elitism among, and here in the United States, it's well, are you from Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Berkeley, and if that's in your CV, well then you get moved up. It doesn't even matter really. I mean, you just get in the door.
Yeah.
Versus an institution that's nobody's ever heard of, or it's in a country that is developing, or let's colonize the word here. But I think that's something that it's really important to cultural analysis, but I think in general that it's important to journals, is that if we're going to be relevant, if we have a relevancy, then we absolutely have to make it accessible. And that midwifery that you were talking about, Anna, I think is essential, because a lot of times scholars send us things and they have the kernel, but they don't have the wherewithal. And I'm not saying that in a arrogant way or something. They just need help to get that article or get to be a focus, so that there's a very good kernel there that can be brought and birthed, if you will. Let's just run with the midwifery.
Karen, if I can interrupt you for a minute, I think what you're talking about is intelligibility. I mean, unfortunately, I've been thinking about this a lot, because midwifing articles that are not written by people who are native English speakers, and midwifing that into an understandable English. But it is about elitism, because we're all learning. I mean, in a sense, we're all learning a certain way of writing, a certain genre of writing. That varies. I mean, that varies among countries. And I've read things from Latin America tried to be written into English, and the way that in Spanish-speaking countries, many of them, the way they organize the text, like you said, it's completely different. And we have to make the changes, and we have to ask for the changes, because, like Ethnología Europea is an English language journal, it has to be the articles, and especially the main message and the showing evidence and all that stuff has to be intelligible for people who are, even if they're not native English language speakers, but that they're used to, at some level, a way of understanding, something written in academically in English. And that's the intelligibility, I think, is the problem. And we are not trying to be elitist. We are inevitably part of this elitist system, which we cannot escape. But we don't have a choice as journal editors, but to make sure that, you know, what we publish is intelligible in a sense. And a lot of it that comes in, like you said, it's got the kernel, you see the spark there's something, but it just hasn't quite made it. But sorry, Karen, please go ahead. Continue with what you were saying. Yeah.
I agree. And I think that we've talked about, you know, how to hold a standard of excellence to an article and not, you know, drop the necessary, you know, core. But I think that's a very fine line for me. And I agree with you, intelligibility, but there are also just, I think, ways of expressing things that can be just,
no. Do you think I love kids?
No, so do I, especially mine.
We have to convince Milo that he has to get a watermelon now because it's really hot and that is very boring here.
Yes, it is. I agree. Get the watermelon.
Watermelon, Milo, Wassermelone. Bis gleich. I'm back in a second.
Okay. No problem.
I think that there has to be intelligibility, but I wrestle with maybe we should do a little bit more work and have a little bit more imagination about stretching our way of how things are told, the story of it.
Yeah.
And because there is a questioning of the academic canon, is there also a questioning of the way things have to be written?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm one way or another. I think that's a question that maybe even has to be addressed article by article. I don't know. But I think that at least the conversation has to be the rules that we have been going on are not infallible, obviously. And maybe we need to step back and be a little bit more humble when we approach things instead of automatically forcing it into the model that we say it has to be in. Sorry
for interrupting. I very much agree with everything you said, but I think the problem that we at Ethnologia Europaea are facing, and I don't know, maybe it's the same in other journals here as well, is less that we are confronted with creative styles of writing that would give us an insight into alternative worlds of thinking and writing and researching, but more the opposite, actually, that we get a lot of articles that don't have any research question at all. And if they have a research question, then they don't have an objective, and they write something about something that's, where they've been and they've talked to people and that was really nice. And they're writing that all up. And now it's the end of the paper. So can we publish that now, please? And of course, that was of course a bit it's not like that exactly, but I think you get the point. I think it's not, at least from papers we get, and it's not so much about the other voices, but the lack of the spark, actually. That we've been there, we've done some research, we're writing that up, but what is actually interesting here, and how are you going to contribute to existing knowledge
and existing scientific discussions? You know, it's
but that you you can refuse those. But I'm also editor of this national Dutch and Flemish journal Volkskunde. And we also faced this problem. And what we did is that we established other categories. So we have a rubric, scientific articles. They are double-blinded, reviewed by 2 peer reviewers and so on. So that is just the standard thing. And then we have this rubric essays, which are also have a quite high quality, but we do not have a review system here. But we as editors are the reviewers in a way. And it's also possible to have, to talk a little bit provocative about a thing or so. And then we have this rubric with those articles you mentioned, Alex, and that is a rubric called Bausteine. I don't know the English words, stones, just bricks. And this is a rubric with shorter pieces, pieces that often exactly do not have any research questions, but are just descriptions of, things that might be interesting for research, but we still give authors a platform. And what we see is that those pieces can be highly stimulating research. We get answers to that. We get people sometimes submit articles that are stimulated by those bricks, right? So that is something that this journal can do. However, of course, Ethnologia Europaea has also to face all these expectations. CF has, the world has about you, that our whole field has, as is the same problem, I think, with the Zeitschrift für Volkskunde, that is so connected to the DGV that it has not the freedom to think as creative, maybe, or I don't know the word, as cultural analysis does, who is really not, we are dependent on this website of Berkeley, of course, but then we don't have any other connections.
And we really are sort of allowed to do what we want to do.
Can I say two things? It's super interesting to hear all of this. And I think this BRICS is a good idea also to attract younger people, for example, to publish things. I will definitely bring this into our editors meeting as a concept. Thank you. But to add up what Alexandra says, we have examples of, for example, research that has been conducted by people from the Romanian university system, and they are ethnologists or anthropologists, and they are going to the countryside and collect data and have questions that are just out of time, to put it simply. So if you do this middle, you have to really do a time warp and bring them 40 years, and you can't just do everything because it's a mindset that they have. Yes. And you can't just change a mindset that they have been taught by authority figures that they are believing in, and they brought them to where they are now. So you can't work against their authority figures. And that's a problem we have, I think, generally when you're with your aspirations that I highly estimate. And I'm very happy to hear that you say we have to find a way out of elitism, and where should it come from then? From the Berkeley University somehow, with this whole tradition of rethinking elites as an elitist university. But at the same time, I see, and this will not change, I see that there is it's just a disadvantage. You're trained rhetorically and also grew up in a language and it's your mother tongue, and then you're just like going into the university system and you meet all those different stylistic options that you have, and you learn also to write in a certain way, or you just are not a person with these kind of options in life, and that's just that's the problem, that this lingua franca we are living in is not Latin, which we all have to learn. And this means that we are always, disadvantaged in a certain way. And at the same time, and that's something I see in, at least for the Zeitschrift für Volkskunde, is that I see that we have interesting traditions, I think not only interesting, but really valuable traditions to the global field of academia in the German-speaking Volkskunde and Völkerkunde. Some, not everything, but some things are really good. And it would be great to merge those with the current concepts of the Anglo-American and French system. But people are striving and want to be part of this discourse that they always get and that they read, and those great pieces that are the product of 10 years of work, of first a PhD with a great committee working on it, then a publishing house, and then they get these books, and our production situation is totally different. And so they're very often just imitating a discourse instead of having the also the means, the possibility to really bring something new into it. So I'm totally up for what you want, and I hope that this will happen. And as much as we can do this from the German side or the European side, I'm sure I think we try to do that, but it is just difficult because it's not our mother tongue, and that's something I see as a very important problem in this.
I totally relate to what you were saying, though, about this mindset, because I was in Iran. My husband is Iranian, and I was invited to give a lecture in Iran at the Anthropological Research Center, and they had published a book that I had done about a Persian folktale. And in Iran, I'm sure you're aware, folklore is, you have to walk a very, very, very fine line about what you can talk about. And so I was giving this kind of, I don't know how you could talk about folklore without being political, but I managed. I sort of walked this, sort of like, well, I did one of those things, Alexandra, where I was like, this is what I did. Look at these things. Isn't this really interesting? Which is, blah, blah, blah. But I thought, this is easy. I won't get arrested, right? I'll be fine. But one of the things that was really fascinating, which I had talked to many Iranians in this country about, and I really saw when I gave my talk, is that they sat there and they were just looking at me like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, this is not folklore. Because I was talking about, I was teaching in Maine. I'm not in Maine right now, but I teach out of the University of Maine. And I had gone to a town called Lewiston, and I had gone into a little cafe. And there's a lot of Somali refugees in Maine that came to live there. And I went into this little cafe, and this Somali gentleman was running it, and he had proverbs on little plaques all over the wall. Little Somali that he had written and painted on these little plaques. And I asked him about it, and he said, oh, well, I was, in my restaurant, people were coming in to get food, and I didn't have enough time. They were getting impatient. So I deliberately made an error in a Somali proverb, which Somali is a very rich, proverb-rich culture. They use it much like Iranians do. Very, they use it in everyday speech. He said, I made a little mistake. And every single person that came in there, which of course a lot of Somalis, would argue about it. And they get totally distracted so that I could make my food. And I was just in love with this. He was a wonderful, wonderful person. And then from that, people wanted to put their proverbs up. And then other people, tourists, would come in, and there was Dutch and Arabic and Farsi and, all of these things. And it was just fascinating to me about this way in which he used it, and the way in which the whole proverb had been sort of like twisted instead of, sort of being orally transmitted. Now it was being a material object on the wall. And I'm getting off the subject. But anyway, I was talking about this, and they just looked at me like I had three heads. Like, what in the world are you talking about? Because for them, it was this very 19th century, you go out and you find somebody who's doing some very, very traditional something or other, and you put on a little presentation, and you show them dressed up, and and I thought, oh boy, it was just running into that. And as you said, it's a very authoritarian, and it's a very top-down hierarchical education system. And you just there's no reflexivity really that goes on a lot. So it was something that I thought, oh boy, this would be a real challenge outside of the politics of being able to say what I wanted to say. But I see what you're saying there. It's a really entrenched way of being and seeing the world. I almost get very pessimistic in thinking sometimes you just have to wait it out. It's dying out. I mean, literally. And hopefully that a much more mobile, flexible worldview will come up.
I'm a bit pessimistic about what you're saying, because I think that the digital situation actually serves a consolidation of such views, because it is merging with a folklore traditionalist concept of how to sell and economize actually your culture. Mm-hmm. And nationalist movements take this kind of 19th century, because it is alongside the 19th century nation building process, these kind of folklore concepts have been developed. And I also think that those who are actually questioning their authority figures will do their PhD in other countries. Mm-hmm. They just go to another country and they leave the country. And so I'm rather pessimistic, although I would like to be an optimist. But given the current situation, I think that it is also a question how we translate without being paternalistic or maternalistic with, or, you know, because people just feel like, oh, you're coming with this kind of neo-colonial concepts of, so it's really, it's so difficult. It's a difficult situation. And I just hope that we're finding a way. And I think that's where journals are becoming more important. And maybe just through your concept of inclusivity or giving the space for BRICS or these kind of discourses, people are getting attracted to sites as cultural analysis. And then they're going to the other articles that are written in such a beautiful rhetorical style with everything that just seduces, because these are great literary pieces. And that's the other shift we're currently seeing. We're seeing, a revival of literature in ethnology. And so I just hope by a better storytelling of anthropological articles. And then now I think that's a possible journal future, just getting those people and attracting them to the sites. And then from that, they are coming to, your piece on proverbs and the ambiguity of material semiotic objects.
Mm-hmm. True.
I ask a little.
Oh, sorry.
Please, sorry. Sophie.
If it is Laura.
Yeah, if I can just ask a question that Anne was talking about data migration, if I remember the term right. So, do I understand right that that's the idea that the publisher will get, will get your information out to different search engines and things like that? Did I understand it right?
No, the data migration is keeping in 50 years or in 30 years your stuff still readable. And that's something we are doing in Germany. We're doing with this university system of the Freie Universität. That's where we currently have the application running for a grant. But the publishing houses guarantee this as well, as long as the journal is with a publishing house.
I see.
Yeah.
I wonder what happens if the journal is not with the publishing house. Then what happens? These are good point. Good point. That's a very good point. I know. I just wanted, that just was an interesting.
I mean, it's a bit similar. It's maybe a bit similar because we had this currently that we have, I think, 130 people who are receiving the Zeitschrift für Volkskunde without being member of the association. And one of the reasons that were keeping us with the old publishing house was that the migration of those 130 abonnements are an issue. Yeah. So probably it will be just something that will be put into the whole new negotiations.
I think this was also quite an issue when Ethnologia Europaea was going open access and was transferred from Museum Tusculanum Press to the open.
To the Open Library of Humanities. Yeah. I don't know all about that, but I know that they got separate funding to digitize the old issues and put them down.
My institute did.
Oh, your institute did.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it was my assistant who stood at
Thank you.
That was well, it's also kind of funding, of course, but I think also this issue of keeping the abonnés, the transfer of the addresses, all those kinds of, it seems to be easy, but it is quite complex.
I can imagine.
I think this was even more an issue also.
Yeah. And I think that for any journal that has been around for a long time, carrying those old issues from place to place, if you feel that your current publisher is not the safe haven that you were hoping for, and then having to switch publishers, then carrying all the old issues with you it's a huge consideration.
Yes.
So it's
Exactly. We have 50 minutes left. Shall we also just discuss shortly the main problem of cultural analysis, which is the reviews and the review systems? And we would be very interested how maybe you have first experiences, Laura and Alex, how you find reviewers, how you organize reviewers.
It's not very professional, I have to say.
I don't know if ours is either. We're sort of sending, please.
So our main problem is really to we try to have 2 reviews per article in a mixed issue, and we only have we work with only 1 review in special issues, but then we ask from the guest editors to do the second review in order to get a round publication. They of course have the overview, and these specific separate reviewers who come from external reviewers, they only see the specific article, right? But still, still we have also with the special issue article reviews where we only need 1 reviewer per article. We still have problem to find enough, and we also have the experience that people refuse because they say, well, we really know who the authors are. Our fields are so small, and we cannot do it. Even if it is double-blinded, we cannot write the review. What we try with the mixed issues is to have 1 reviewer, to have 2 reviewers from really different fields. For instance, if you have an article on intangible cultural heritage in China, we would ask 1 colleague who is experienced with this intangible heritage topic, and the other maybe who's more experienced with Chinese culture, right? So, but still we face this problem of finding reviewers, and I don't know how.
We have the same. We have the problem, and especially with special issues in relatively narrow fields, as you said.
Exactly.
Really. Oh, yes. Sorry, Marilyn has just sent a chat. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for dropping by.
Thank you.
Very nice to have you. And yes. So we are actually required for our Nordic Council funding, required to have 2 reviewers for every article. Otherwise, probably we would have gone at some point to 1 reviewer or something like that. But we're required. So yes, we occasionally we feel a bit desperate. We've now just informed our new board members that they will be doing reviews, and I just asked some, and they said yes. So, but yes, occasionally we run into the problem. We just can't find anybody, or if someone has written an interesting article, but it's about something that's not very commonly done in ethnology or folklore studies, so then it can be difficult to find people with the same or enough disciplinary similarity, even if it's kind of the same issue, same topic, sort of, except that, a sociologist would look at it very differently or would demand different things than an ethnologist. But if I can say really quickly, an interesting model for reviewing that I encountered. This was not as part of the journal, but for a book that I contributed to was that they had each author of the chapters in the book review each other. Well, we didn't know, who each other was because we had not received a table of contents, with the different chapters and the authors. So we just kind of knew vaguely that maybe there were these people that were also contributing to the book. And for example, I got an article, and I truly didn't know who the authors were. And of course, in that way, of course, you're motivated to say, yes, this chapter passes because you realize that this is all part of the same book. But at the same time, you're also motivated to make sure that it's a good quality because your chapter is going to be published with it. So there's that kind of dual thing. And then, I feel like it worked. I mean, people were fairly positive because, of course, they're going to be published in the same book. But at the same time, I'm sure, people did bring up issues that needed to be addressed in the chapters if something was missing or it didn't make sense or something. So that's one thing that I think it's kind of maybe a last resort if you really don't have the time or the resources to find reviewers, but have everybody in a special issue review each other could be something that, especially for a journal like cultural analysis where the authors really wouldn't know each other ahead of time. I mean, they wouldn't know who each other was. You know what I mean? If they were. Though they might actually, of course, they might. They
might if it is
issue editors.
A special issue derives, for instance, from a CF panel. But at the moment, we are having a call for a special issue on the last year and on the pandemic.
Right.
And there, the authors don't know each other, so that would be a really fantastic solution. Yeah.
No, I think it just, I can just tell you that it worked the time it seemed to work, the time that I experienced it. So, yeah.
So I'd just like to share one more thing that I forced my poor student assistant to produce an Excel list with, I gave her the names of all the authors who have ever published, not ever, but since the transition to OLH, because for the old ones, we don't have any reliable author lists. And I think that would be really too much for her to really work on all the old issues. But since the transition, it's quite easy to get an Excel list from OLH with all the authors, all the reviewers, and also what the titles of the papers they wrote. So I asked her to produce a list of all these people who somehow already have a link to Ethnologia and maybe also have the feeling that they owe something to Ethnologia Europea. So the basic idea is that if we don't know who to ask, then we can still look in that Excel list and see if there's anybody who has ever written something in that area. And we might approach that person and also maybe refer to it, as a former author. And we would appreciate it if you, because I think that what I think is really important, and of course it doesn't always work, but when you ask for reviews, of course there are these people who don't reply at all, and there are these people who just click decline, and that's it. But I found it's really helpful when you manage to get some kind of personal relationship with them, and even if they can't write a review, they might direct you to someone else. They might recommend someone else, and I think that's also very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. And we, Monique and Marie, kind of encouraged us to always say in our, and maybe you guys do this too, probably. I mean, just to say, because of your expertise in such and such and such topics, we feel that you are the ideal reviewer, blah, blah, blah. And actually that seems to work in the sense of Alex said, I mean, not everybody says yes, because some people, of course, are too busy, but a lot of people, at least I've gotten a lot of emails from people who feel bad about declining and say, by email, instead of just clicking decline, they say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And then I say, oh, thank you for letting me know. And, and hopefully if we ever, ask them again, then they might remember that there was this friendly dialogue between us. But it is, I mean, I've gotten a lot of reviewers by Googling. And so has PLV has helped us do that. She's just done long Google searches of who is doing this topic, because these topics are not ones that I've worked on. So, if it's folkloristics, because I come from a folklore background, so, yes, I can usually kind of guess or easily find the folklorist. But when it comes to ethnology or even cultural anthropology, sometimes it's guesswork when it's really specific issues that it is a real challenge for us as well. But I would say overall, yeah.
And how do you deal with authors who add recommendations for reviewers to their articles?
I haven't had that yet.
Haven't had that, but I think we would be happy to get it. I mean, I don't think. We've asked, we ask we have guidelines for special issues. We also now have, thanks to Alex, we have guidelines for reviewers as well, because we were getting reviews that were like this short. But yes, for the special issues, we ask for possible reviewers. Unfortunately, what tends to happen is that these people say, they say, like, what's happened to me is that they say, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time, but please ask, this person could be a reviewer and happens to be the editor of the special issue. Yes, it's like, yes, it's a very, very tight, small circle sometimes, but we're happy to get them from the special issue editors. The authors have not actually offered them, and we haven't asked. So I don't know, what do you feel about that? Do you want to take such recommendations or not, or from authors, or ideas for reviewers, or?
Well, you mean us?
Yes, you. Yeah, yes. Sorry, cultural analysis.
Well, we have this issue now with the special issue that we also get recommendations from the authors, but those reviewers refused. So those reviewers, or some of them, said, "Well, we really know the authors, and we won't do it." We have also, what we also have is what we also do is writing very nice emails to reviewers saying that they are the experts indeed. And we have also such a review form, and I send it always together with my first email to them so that they already know how it works, just for their information. And I send the abstract of the article, but not the article itself, of course, because that is not
exactly
interesting for this first contact.
And we also send the abstracts, please.
I think, I don't know, Sophie, if you do, but I always ask for recommendations. I'm like, if you can, because a lot of times people will say, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. I get a lot of that. I mean, I went through like 8 people for one article, and most of the people were very gracious about it, but they were like, I'm sorry, I'm just really busy. And that seems to be, unfortunately, you can't work your way around that. Even if you're like, well, would you need, I mean, I even have a sentence which says, this is when we'd like it by, but it has a little bit of flexibility, because I want them
to do the same.
There is even this much interest in taking it.
I'm
going to be as flexible as I can.
We're willing to it.
As hard as I can. So I ask for recommendations, and I make it at least appear that I'm more flexible about the time line. And I do the thing of, you have been recommended as being an expert in this,
Exactly.
But maybe we could also help each other. I mean, if you are in problems of finding reviewers, or we are, that we can just do a kind of,
we could do a swap.
We are allowed to email you if you have recommendations, and you could email us if we have.
And
so
we
have a little bit joint. Only if help is really needed. So
I think that's a good idea, and we don't have to. Neither side has to feel pressure that, oh my goodness, I've got to come up with a reviewer for cultural analysis or Ethnología Europea. But we might happen to know, like you might say, well, we're looking for somebody doing on this topic, and we maybe just had a couple of authors who, and then we could say yes, and then it's similar. So it could be that we don't have to feel under pressure, but just to, if it comes to our minds, that definitely we try to help. Yeah. And the same with you, Anna, if you need for English language, articles in the future,
right?
So
I just really like the idea of a central data bank.
Oh yeah, wouldn't that be great? Oh
my God, I would love that. By subject and by geography. I mean, it's way beyond anything that I would be able to ever even think about organizing. But I always thought, boy, if anybody did that, I'd be so on board with that.
And that's the problem. I mean, even though we have the really great Excel sheet that Alexandra's student assistant, thank you to that person, made. But as far as I know, Alex, we didn't have time, it's just too hard to add the subject. That we don't have their topics that they do.
We have keywords.
What about keywords? Oh, sorry, I haven't looked at it.
Type on the paper and there's keywords.
Oh, lovely. Okay, that's lovely. Yeah.
Karen, I think we also have such a list, but we have never worked with it. I think my assistant has also 3 or 4 years ago, but I just forgot, and now I'm hearing Alex. I will immediately email her.
The hand, the head and the tail are kind of like, what? Where?
Yeah,
what?
Yeah.
That easily happens.
Anna, you work also with reviews, right? But with peer reviews, do you face the same problems, or is it more easy? Or
a very small community. I mean, very quickly, I think many people can guess. And I sometimes thought it would be just okay to do open reviews so that it's clear because we have things where it's clear there's just 1 or 2 people who do that, and we try to find it. It's quite a challenge. But what we have is, Alexandra was saying, some people don't reply or say they are doing something and then it's not coming. But usually, if you ask 2 or 3 people, they feel obliged to do that work still. At least, but I'm just too short in it. I just realized, so I had difficulties to find somebody, and it took me quite some while. And I decided to ask people who are intellectually and theoretically able to draw, to understand the topic, although they are, for example, not experts on catastrophe management of avalanches or something like that. But I understand that they understand the theoretical concept behind it, and would ask the right questions or look rigorously whether the text is convincing. And that actually helped because since we're such a small discipline, some people are used to write in a certain manner, and nobody is really at a certain point because of the personal attachments, nobody's really criticizing anymore in the right way. And then with these people coming from the outside, from different fields, maybe different regions and different expertise, don't know this person, and then they wonder and say, how come this person is writing, I don't know, is so theory driven or in love with name dropping or concept dropping or whatever. And then that's good because this pushes the people. And I just had a situation where I got a very positive review, and I'm sure the person knew the other, and a reject. And so I could send both and wrap it up beautifully. And so, and now the person rewrites the article, and I said I will do a 3rd review. So now I have the problem again to find somebody who's able to review this. But that's an idea. I understand that one wants to have somebody who is really able to understand what you're doing. But for example, I'm in my research field also, there's a handful of people who do something, and then people who really could evaluate what I'm doing maybe are surely not speaking my language when I'm writing in German, or they're coming from a different disciplinary background and are not cultural anthropologists. So I think it's good to go beyond the box of the real expertise, at least in our field, to guarantee the blind peer review, which we want to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. Good point. Yeah.
So it's 5:45 in my time, Helsinki 6:45. I think you want to have dinner or so. But the very last question. So, we are a very small group now, but I think we are the hugest maybe ethnology, cultural anthropology journals in our disciplines altogether here. So do you have any ideas what CF could do, how CF can help, or should we have, what can we do as CF to support? Would it be good to have such a meeting with us to invite even more people once a year or twice a year or only during the conferences? Or Anne, you have
I have one thing that I was wondering constantly. You were, I think, Laura, you were saying that part of your funding is the Nordic grant. And what I see is that I would like to become a bit more independent for doing, for example, investing money into graphic designers. And I think that's something for cultural analysis also, which would be great to have a more beautiful interface and so on. And it must be possible to join as journals and to apply, for example, a European funding. If there is a Nordic funding, I wonder whether there's any also for example, translation work or content editing. I mean, there are things that can't be outsourced to algorithms, and that's these works. And I wonder, and I always think when I'm looking at the German funding system, where is the slot where I could put in this kind of money that I would like to have? And I think somebody of you, I think Laura, you mentioned it before, that this payment by author system works because those physics departments, for example, have money in stock for the authors to get to give this money. So that's something that I think would be really good if the CF provides a platform where we could come together and think about applying, all of us, for these kind of international funds to get the money, and then we could distribute it and just become also more visible. Because I think, which comes back to the discussion we had before, the knowledge we have is important, is very important, and we are not heard enough. And that's why we want to change our name, because nobody knows what we're actually doing. So nobody knows what Volkskundler are doing, like really, it's, the philosophers are asked our questions and have to answer what home means or stuff. So I think that would be, and we are really cool and sexy, but nobody knows us. And that's, I think, something that has to change, and where I think we should get money. So if CF is able to provide us a platform, or we find as editors an option to really come together and to apply for funding. And I just got from a colleague of mine, she did a bigger European application, and she worked together with a small company which actually does this professionally, and they have 100% success rate in European funding.
Wow!
But you have to pay them.
Wow.
So we need to get this money to pay these people who know the deadlines, who know the wording. I didn't know it existed either, and they have like 100% success rate for many different things. So there's this Erasmus and whatever grant. So I think there are options, and we're just knowing it. And I think CF is the right place and the right platform to bring us together, because we need to collaborate more. I think this is something where Monique, for example, with somebody who could also provide us with knowledge, with her position as a chancellor now, I think, for internationalization at the University of Tübingen. So this would be something where I see future.
So
please,
Laura.
No, I think that's talking about the funding is a really important thing. I have to say that I've kept my ears open for the past, a couple of years, and there is not a lot of funding. I know the ERC the European Union funding. I don't think that there's any way to apply for journal funding there. And even nationally, like Finland doesn't have a channel for that. I don't know if other countries do. But one thing, this is probably something I should not be saying as Ethnologia Europe if I editor. But okay, the CF actually gives us a lot of money to our journal. And to be totally honest and democratic and egalitarian, I actually think that some of the money that comes to us, which we can't just say we don't need it right now, but I would like to see personally, I don't know, sorry, Alex, I didn't ask you before I said this, but I would personally like to see that. I think we talked about this with Alex. Alex already knows my views on this, but I think I would like to go towards a model where Ethnologia Europea costs a little bit less. And, maybe the money that was saved maybe CF could create a kind of a grant system for journals. It doesn't have to be just EE. I do think that the other voices should be out there. And so, we're talking with Alex, and we're trying to find a way to get into a place where we are costing less money. And so, but anyway, I think that CF, has been generously funding Ethnologia Europea. So, I know that there is some money there, and I'm not quite sure that Ethnologia Europea should cost as much as it does each issue. And so, having some sort of grant system for, European or, whatever, but I think journals being such an important, I think on this point was really, really important.
But this brings us back to the beginning of the conversation when you were saying that the F wasn't wished for by some people, and that the SIEF wants to become more international. And as far as I learned from Regina, is that the model of SIEF is that if you become you have to become a member to present at the conference, and that's where the money is coming from, which is a great solution. So if there is an internationalization and you have this kind of grant system for journals, which is a great idea, I think, then you would also attract people from different countries, continents to the SIEF. So it would be something where the SIEF is even profiting from.
Absolutely.
In the long run. So that would be, and then we could also work better together and join collectively to really bring the things that are vital and important to us to a broader audience.
Well, I agree with everything that's being said, because CA is always looking for joining with others, and we're sort of interdisciplinary, and we look for ways in which we certainly feel like, as Anna said, we're doing a lot of cool stuff, and not very many people know about us. And we've been hacking around for 20 years, and you guys have been around a lot longer. But just getting us out there has it's an uphill climb, and being able to pull on the expertise of other journals, or just this kind of conversation, is very helpful for me. Just in terms of what are you facing, what are you thinking, what are your problems, and what are your solutions, and just makes misery loves company. But also just in terms of, it gives me more to think about, and some of the ideas were great, and I'm like scrawling all over my pad, with big stars, like, this is a great idea. So, and the graphics, that would be wonderful to have. And I think our webmaster would love to be able to collaborate with other people if there was some money in it, that we could go beyond.
Can I say one more thing? I know we're running out of time, and this is going to be really brief, even though this is, I'm sorry. It's just that I want to get this out there, and I feel that you guys are a good audience. So if we're talking about funding, one of the things, this unfortunately doesn't have anything to do with journals, but it does have to do with funding for our fields. And one of the things that I've applied for the past 2 years to the European Research Commission, I think it's ERC, and it was very interesting to notice that the ERC does not actually, they've got evaluation panels for many, many fields, right? They don't have any evaluation panel dealing with any of the fields represented by CF: ethnology, folklore studies, cultural anthropology. They have social anthropology, but it's in a panel that's very sort of quantitative. And I was thinking, this is not something that has to be done now, but I'm just kind of throwing it out there for future years or future something, that at some point, maybe there could be an idea that CF could petition the European Union to really think about, these are three big fields. Because people don't have to be Europeans to get an ERC. It's a worldwide thing. You have to be at a European research institution for the time that you're getting the funding, say 5 years, but you don't have to be a European citizen. So it's a really kind of a worldwide, something that I think is important also for the EU's research policy, which is to get innovation. But when all three fields are gone, just not represented at all, meaning they don't have any panelists from those fields ever evaluating the applications. So meaning that those types, our fields don't get funded. Everybody is pretty much voting politically. They're voting for their own fields, of course. So this is just something that, just came to my
Thank you
mind.
for bringing this up. This is really so important, and I will definitely bring it to the new board. But maybe you could also, I mean, you will also join us regularly. Sure. Maybe you could also repeat it there, sure. Which would be great. And I think this is really an important task for CF. Thank you. Thanks. And as to Anne's and the idea about having a think tank and about funding and also developing developing something like an application if we would find a good funding program. Shall we keep in contact about that?
Yes.
How can we organize this?
Well, actually, Sophie, I liked your idea about meeting. I mean, I would be happy to meet once a year with journal editors, really, because this field is changing so fast that there's always new information and yeah.
Yeah, I would too. I would even say every 6 months, just because things. I agree with Laura. They're changing.
Shall we just have another meeting in 6 months and then think about the topics? And one of the topics would be this funding topic. And maybe Anne, you could already look around, and we could look around and have email conversation before, so that we can prepare it a little bit.
I will try to look around, although I have quite a tight schedule, especially with those obligations we have currently with the open access transformation. I will bring this to everything we just have. I will bring this to the editors meeting we have in September. We really have a lot of things to do right now. And I try and we'll bring you with all the updates we have from this whole transition we are facing. And I will keep an open ear about the funding thing, but I have to admit to you, I'm not able to do the research right now. That's something I could do actually, I think from April next year on. Then I have a bit more breathing because I'm starting now the habilitation process. I will hand in September this thing. So I will write until September the last pieces. And then it's just so much that it would be
of course
not right to say I'm doing it. But I will keep my ears open. I will ask Regina Bendix. I'm sure she knows more about this. And I will bring this to the others and I will try to get as much knowledge. And also, at least in Germany, it's like that if you're a real full professor, you get a monthly by the university, these kind of letters. And I'm currently stand-in professor. So I'm just like putting in the position of standing in, and then I will be again researcher and lecturer. And so I'm not getting access to this knowledge as others do. So Alexandra, I don't know whether you get this kind of emails.
Spoken about inclusiveness.
I'm not excluded by this, but just by my position in this quite absolutist old school German system as Mittelbau, we call it, which just doesn't allow me this access. But I will ask around, and I will find out these funding, these people who write this funding thing that I can definitely.
So, and I will contact you in 5 months or so, and then we can talk about the next meeting, and also try to encourage more people to join us.
Yes,
that would be excellent.
But it was great to have you here, and I think
Absolutely.
This was very important for all three journals. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And see you in the next days.